How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JJ Domination, and today we're going to be talking about something a little different. Something that's not NFL related, despite it being Madden season. For right now, we're going to be talking about the NBA, man, and as you can see in a Golden State uniform, we're talking about Carmelo Anthony, man. That's right, man. We're going to be talking about Carmelo. He has been a huge topic of discussion ever since Friday when he went on ESPN's First Take to, well, kind of clear the air with Stephen A. Smith, which, by the way, I'd commend Melo on coming on national TV and speaking his emotion despite, or speaking his piece, I should say, speaking his mind, giving it from his perspective, despite all of the slander and criticism that he's been receiving. Whether he deserves it or not is completely irrelevant, but it's good that he actually spoke on his own name. You know, I'm glad that he cleared the air about a lot of things, from the 10 games that he played for the Houston Rockets to how he was informed about being released and out of the rotation, and his time in Oklahoma City, his time in New York when he almost joined the Chicago Bulls in a free agency period, but instead he took more guaranteed money in New York, which, in my opinion, if a team is offering you more money and you take it, well, good for you. I mean, what would you do in that situation? You're gonna turn down money, like more money? I mean, come on. Naturally, it depends on your morals, I guess, but not everyone's gonna turn down more money from a certain team or the most money they can get. He also talked about a little bit of his younger days as well. He basically cleared the air about a lot of different situations and how he just wants to contribute to basketball. He just wants to be out there playing basketball in some capacity. And he did admit how his ego took a big hit, especially when he was kind of the third or fourth scoring option on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And basically, that was the demise of Melo, man, when he was playing with Oklahoma City and playing in a lesser role, because some people, including myself at one point, kind of put a lot of the blame on Carmelo Anthony. Then you watch the following season and the Thunder are basically the same team, maybe a win better, and they still get eliminated in the first round. So that just goes to show you that it wasn't necessarily because of Carmelo Anthony, because they basically remained the same team. So you can't really say that, that it was Carmelo's fault. Now, for the Houston Rockets situation, it's kind of interesting because it made no sense from the beginning. Number one, the head coach for the Houston Rockets is Mike D'Antoni, who has had history with Carmelo in the past in New York when he was a part of the Knicks. So my question is, why would the organization sign Melo knowing the relationship past of Mike D'Antoni and Carmelo Anthony? Number two, the Houston Rockets literally attempt more threes than shots inside the paint. Carmelo Anthony is a guy who, yes, he can shoot the three. I think on his career he shoots like 37%, which in today's NBA would be, pretty solid out there. I think this past season he may have shot like 32%, which, to put that in perspective, that's 1% higher or 2% higher than Kyle Kuzma last year. Not taking a shot at Kyle Kuzma, I'm just telling you, like, hey, that's how it is. In his 10-game stretch with the Houston Rockets. But Houston's a team that relies on the analytics. Melo is a guy who, he shoots a lot of mid-range jumpers. He's an isolation player, which is interesting because James Harden's an isolation player, but he shoots a lot of threes and he makes them, whereas Melo is more of a mid-range killer. He's always been a mid-range killer his entire career. And yet the Houston Rockets, who shoot threes and rely on analytics and advanced metrics to determine how they're going to play their style of basketball, it literally made no sense for the Houston Rockets to sign him, but yet they insisted on signing him. And number three, Daryl Morey's desperation to have a big name in Houston. I mean, they already got Chris Paul that offseason, I'm pretty sure. Or no, it was the year before, I believe, when they made the trade for Chris Paul. And then they go out and get Carmelo Anthony. Why? Because his name is Carmelo Anthony. He's a brand. He's an established player. People know who Carmelo Anthony is. And he was traded to the Atlanta Hawks. He was probably on the Atlanta Hawks for 10 minutes before he got released. Greatest Atlanta Hawk of all time, by the way. And rumors were that he was going to consider like the Bulls, I guess, but the Rockets called him. And, Melo's not going to turn down an offer to play in the league. I'm sure he wants to play basketball, which is why he took the call from Houston. But there's just a lot of things that pointed at this not working, and the media were actually right for a change about a player not working in a big city or for a contending team, and that was Carmelo Anthony. It wasn't going to work because of the past relationship with Mike D'Antoni, their style of basketball versus Carmelo Anthony's style of play. There was just no way it was going to work. Not to mention they tried to make him like the third scoring option or the fourth scoring option, similar to what happened in Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Steven Adams, which, whatever, I guess. But Melo did admit that his ego did take a hit when he had to be like the third or fourth scoring option on a team. And he said that the Oklahoma City Thunder weren't clear in what they wanted to do and what Melo's role would be. No one actually made it clear to him whether or not he was going to come off the bench. So he did have that remark jokingly when he said, I ain't coming off no bench. But, people took that home, they wrote it home, and they used that as a narrative of Melo being a selfish player when it was floated around at the time, and I'm sure Melo was like, whatever, I'm Carmelo Anthony, I'm not sitting on the bench. But I'm pretty sure if Billy Donovan was like, look, we like what you bring to this team, but we're going to start Jeremy Grant, and we think that you'd be better coming off the bench and providing a spark and playing with at least Russell Westbrook or Paul George when you come off the bench, so that way you're not taking any of their shots either. I'm pretty sure if somebody would have made that clear to him, then I'm pretty sure he would have accepted that role. He would have been fine with it. But nobody made it clear to him in terms of what Carmelo Anthony was saying. And listen, if it's coming from Carmelo's mouth, I don't know if he's a liar or not. I'm just going to take him at his word. I'm not going to sit here and call him a liar. So I'm going to have to take Melo at his word with that, man. But I made a post on social media talking about the Carmelo Anthony interview and stuff. And I know he's wearing the number 7 now, but one of the reasons why 15 was my favorite number in sports was because of Carmelo Anthony. It really had to do with him and Tim Tebow, but mainly because of Carmelo Anthony. He was just a player I gravitated towards, and he was just a guy that I really liked, man. I was really a fan of his game when I started getting into basketball. Him and Kobe Bryant were like 2 of my 5 favorite players at the time. I was a huge fan of Tim Duncan, Dirk, and Ray Allen. And those were just guys that I really liked to watch, man. Guys who, they all brought something different, in terms of me watching the game. Like Melo was a guy that was just a walking bucket. Kobe was like the star player. I mean, Melo's a star player in his own right, don't get me wrong, but Melo was just, I loved his game. And Kobe was like arguably the best player at that time. And then you look at Tim Duncan, who was kind of a boring player to some, but to me, I was just so fascinated by how he can do all of the little things and how great of a leader he was. And same thing with Dirk, man. And plus, Dirk just has a beautiful stroke when he shoots the basketball. And then finally for Ray Allen, I mean, I am from Connecticut, for those that don't know. I was born there. And Ray Allen went to UConn, and he's just my favorite player from there. Of course, I like, Rip Hamilton and, Rudy Gay, Andre Drummond, Kemba. Like, I like those guys too, but, Ray Allen was just my favorite player and the most successful player from UConn. I really just loved this game. I appreciated what he brought to the table, and he was a great shooter. And, I am nowhere near Ray Allen in three-point shooting. I prefer the mid-range, but in terms of his shooting stroke, I do have a little bit of his motion and his fluidity in my, shooting stroke, which is pretty interesting. But when it comes to Carmelo Anthony, man, he's just one of the reasons why I love the number 15 in sports, especially in football and basketball. And to see him kind of fall from grace like this, I know some of it is definitely his fault, but it's like, man, you mean to tell me that there are, X amount of players better than Carmelo Anthony that can contribute to a team? Like, I'm sure Melo would be a great sixth man somewhere else, in the league, but to me Golden State just seems like a fit. And number one, you have Klay Thompson out. He's projected to be the starting small forward now that this team has D'Angelo Russell and Steph Curry. And I believe the projected starter for night one, if this roster stays without Carmelo Anthony, is Alfonso McKinney. And I like Alfonso McKinney. I think he is I'm not going to say an underrated player, but I think he's a player that deserves more minutes out there, more playing time, so we could really see what more he can do, because I like the limited role that he has now in Golden State. He's a good three-point shooter, not going to offer a lot defensively, but he's a nice body to throw out there onto different people. But Alfonso McKinney's just one of those guys who I think deserves more touches. But Melo could be the sixth man of that team. He doesn't need to start with D'Angelo Russell and Steph, who need the ball in their hands. And plus, you got to look at their bench right now, man. Their bench is not as strong as it used to be. I think the best player coming off their bench is Alec Burks. Maybe that's just me exaggerating a bit. But they still have Kevon Looney. But they've lost Quinn Cook. Sean Livingston, I believe, is still a free agent. They have like Alec Burks, Glenn Robinson out there, and Kevon Looney. They don't have a dude who can get you a bucket off the bench, man. That's just something they're missing. Iguodala not only could get you a bucket, but he could guard your best player. Melo's not going to guard your best player, but he can get a bucket. And I feel like if you play him, as a six man, and you have him out there with at least one of the starters between Steph Curry and D'Angelo Russell, one of your star, guards out there, I think he'd benefit, man. And Steve Kerr is not one of those dudes who's just going to jack up a bunch of threes. Yes, the Golden State Warriors can do that, but the best of them, they're kind of the ones that started the trend. But if you look at, shot attempts last season, they were still like top 10, but they weren't like number one like people make them out to be. That would be the Houston Rockets. I mean, the Golden State Warriors top 3 in terms of percentages, but they're not taking as many as they used to. They still take a lot, though. But Melo, who's a mid-range player, they could give him some looks, have him come off some screens, and, get him the ball in his hand. Maybe he brings it up the court and finds others. I'm sure Steve Kerr will find a way to utilize him. The San Antonio Spurs would be interesting. Same thing, though, like Greg Popovich just finding a role for him. He could come off the bench, because I think the starting backcourt is going to be like DeJounte Murray, and then I guess Lonnie Walker or Bryn Forbes. I mean, I don't really know how they're going to do that. But Melo could come off the bench with like Patty Mills, who doesn't need the ball in his hand. He can come off the bench with like a Lonnie Walker, who kind of does need the ball in his hand, but Melo, I'm sure, would be fine. I'm sure he'd get him the ball as well if Popovich is like, yo, get my guys involved. So San Antonio would be interesting. The Miami Heat would be intriguing, especially if the Oklahoma City Thunder are able to trade Chris Paul to the Miami Heat, because they did play together last season or whatever or no, they didn't actually. They kind of did, but they didn't, because I think Chris Paul was suspended for that Lakers fight or whatever between him and like Brandon Ingram, which is interesting. But yeah, they could like reunite, I guess, and play with Jimmy Butler, and Melo could come off your bench. You could start Justice Winslow and probably just have Melo come off the bench. I like him in that role better, because in my opinion, if Melo comes off the bench for an NBA team, he could go out there and really be like a sixth man of the year candidate. And I'm not even saying that to be funny. Like, I actually believe that. Lou Williams obviously is going to be the sixth man of the year. He's going to have it on lock. But I feel like Melo could definitely put his name in the conversation at least. I mean, he's that good, to do that. And I feel like in the right role, he will succeed still in the NBA. But it's really sad, man, to see a player like Melo fall from grace. I know a lot of people have had harsh things to say about him, and they have harsh criticisms of Carmelo Anthony, rightfully so. I mean, he did do it to himself after all. But it's gotten to the point where it's kind of insane. I don't think he's, like a cancer. I've never heard anyone say that he's a bad teammate. And speaking of that, we are going to talk about one of his former teammates real quick, Chauncey Billups, who did make an interesting comment about Carmelo Anthony. It's actually like a month old, compared to the interview that came out. But Chauncey was basically saying that like Melo's a great dude, he's a great teammate, but his downfall, or like something that he just hasn't been able to get over, is the mentality of him wanting to score 30 points. Like, and he was given an example, like we could win a game and score 30, and he can score 36 points and we lose, and he's trying to pick everyone up, but we can win, and he scores 22 points and he's a little frustrated in the locker room or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I do get it from a scorer's mentality point, but in terms of just being a teammate, like, give me the 22 point victory over the 36 point, performance and a loss. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just me out there. Personally, I don't care how many points I score as long as we win. I just don't want to score a ton of points and lose. I'd rather just have an off night and not make a damn shot. But I do get it from both perspectives, though. I don't know if Chauncey Billups' comments have hindered Melo in a way. I felt like regardless of what he said, even if he spoke on it, I'm pretty sure Melo would have just still been a free agent. Apparently, according to Melo, some teams worked him out and have tried reaching out to him, but he didn't say who. But of course, the speculation will be the Los Angeles Lakers and Los Angeles Clippers, because they're the two teams right now that are favored to win an NBA title, and the whole notion of Melo wanting to play for a contender is still strong. Even Melo said that, of course, the ultimate goal is to win a championship in his career, and he'd love to join a contending team. But if he doesn't, that his main priority would be to, help the young guys and just be a mentor out there. And I like the fact that he's saying that. Now, I don't know if he's just saying it to come off as that dude who just says the right stuff, but if he is really serious about that, then that's great, because Vince Carter had to accept that role basically since he got to Orlando. He basically accepted that role. He was a great player still, or a very good player, but he had to accept that role eventually, and he did. Unfortunately for Melo, not so much, but the fact that he's willing to do it now, and a lot of it has to do because he doesn't have a job, but who am I to say that that's the only reason why he would be saying that? Oh, he doesn't have a job, so of course he's going to say shit like that to be employed. I'm not one of those dudes. Yeah, some people do say the right stuff to avoid heat, but I don't think Melo would just say that to say that. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't give me that type of vibe when I hear him speak, and I don't really hear Melo talk a whole lot. So it was refreshing to actually hear him talk about something. And the fact that Stephen A. Smith was able to reach out, or actually Carmelo reached out to Stephen A. Smith, but the fact that Stephen A. Smith was able to get this man on TV to kind of speak from his perspective, I thought it was very cool. But man, I just feel bad for Melo. I just think he should be signed, but the team needs to let him know, hey, we're not signing you to be the third scoring option on our team. We're signing you to be a sixth man, to be a guy who will play with the majority of the starters, but you're going to be a sixth man. You're going to come off the bench. You're the first guy off the bench. You're going to contribute. You're going to get us points. We'll try to get you involved in our offense based on your strengths and based on our strengths. And we're going to put you in a place to succeed. Even if you're, obviously they're not going to tell Melo this, but even if you're not the greatest defender, even if you take a bunch of mid-range shots, even if you're not a passer of the basketball like that, you're not instinctive enough to be a good passer, we're going to put you in a position to succeed. Obviously, no coach is going to tell him that, except maybe Greg Popovich, who, let's face it, he keeps it a buck with everybody. I mean, he's told his own players to their face, they suck. So, maybe Popovich would be the one to keep it real, but honestly, man, I'm rooting for Carmelo Anthony. I know a lot of people, don't really care, and they believe he did it to himself, and they've been highly critical, and they're going to stay that way. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you should or you shouldn't be. I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong for being that way, but what I will say is try to understand where I'm coming from and where fans of basketball, not even just Carmelo truthers, are coming from. I'm not a Carmelo truther, but I am a fan of him and his game, and he's just one of those players I've always kept up with and respected. But coming from that perspective, man, Melo should be in the league. There's no way. I mean, this isn't like a Colin Kaepernick situation in the NFL. This is just a situation where all 30 teams just feel like he doesn't fit. And in reality, I'm sure he has to fit with at least one team. There's no way that, insert bench warmer here is better than Carmelo Anthony. There's just absolutely no way. I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that any bench player on any team, championship or not, is better than Carmelo Anthony and will be more productive than Carmelo Anthony. So I'm just hoping that he gets a job somewhere. My ideal fit for him would be the Golden State Warriors. And until Clay comes back, you use him as a sixth man. When Clay comes back, you have him come off the bench, but maybe you play like him, Clay, and Steph at the same time, and not like him, Clay, and D'Angelo, because D'Angelo is going to need the ball more than Steph, whereas Steph can catch and shoot. D'Angelo is more of a pick and roll player who can shoot off dribble, but you prefer him to have the ball in his hand. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed, man. Let me hear your thoughts on Carmelo Anthony. I know it's a very intriguing topic, especially with the recent ESPN First Take interview, but let me know how you guys feel down below, and peace out.